Hey, what's up superstars? My name's Inferno and welcome to the Inferno dimension. Now, as you may know from my extensive history on this channel, I'm a massive fan of the Kirby series. And as a massive fan of the Kirby series, you can imagine how much shit I flipped when I saw the announcement of a new 3D Kirby game. That's right, we're here to talk about Kirby and the Forgotten Land. Oops, not that Forgotten Land. Although Kirby's Return to Michigan would be a great game, Kirby devs, make it happen.
Alright, there's a lot to be excited for with this new Kirby game, but what I'm most excited to see is what copy abilities are going to be coming back. If you're not a Kirby fan, you may be wondering why this matters, and I'd say there's two main reasons. The first is because there's been a lot of abilities throughout the franchise, and each game tends to bring back a different set of abilities from the last one, so you never know what you're going to get with a new Kirby game. The other reason is that the 3D nature of this game means that most abilities are going to feel completely differently to use in this new form factor, with some even getting completely revamped movesets.
So yeah, we'll be talking about how likely I think these abilities are to come back, and I'll give my thoughts on each one. Let's start by going over the abilities that are already confirmed.
So, as of this video's uploading, there's been 2 trailers and 12 abilities have been confirmed, 10 of them being old abilities. Perhaps I'll cover the new abilities in another video, but for now let's see the returning ones. In the first trailer, Bomb, Cutter, Fire, Ice, Needle, Sleep, and Sword were confirmed, while Crash, Hammer, and Tornado were confirmed in trailer 2. Of the first selection, we've seen them all in action except for Sleep, but Sleep will likely do nothing, as is usual for it. The one of these that's the most interesting is Needle, because of the new move where Kirby rolls into a spiky ball and impales enemies. No other ability so far has shown new moves, but it's possible they have some. As for the returning abilities from trailer 2, Hammer was an obvious one. You can't have Kirby without his hammer. Crash was pretty likely and doesn't really bring anything new, but Tornado, my favorite ability in this entire franchise, is interesting. The reason I say that is because Tornado hasn't been in a Kirby game in over a decade, and so far of all the confirmed abilities, it's the one that's been absent from any main series game for the longest. I was worried this ability would never come back due to how long it's been missing, but when it got confirmed, I was so happy. You really should have seen the look on my face.
That's all I have to say about the confirmed abilities. Let's move on to abilities I think are pretty much guaranteed to make it into the game.
So, what makes me 100% confident in these abilities coming back? Well, there's a few reasons, but the main one is consistency and returning for every game. And when it comes to being in every game, the first ability I think of is Beam. This ability is not only in the vast majority of Kirby games, but is one of the most common to acquire, especially early on in the game. The fact that it hasn't been revealed yet is a little weird, but I'm still confident it will make a return, unless the devs really want to surprise us. Moving on, one of Kirby's most versatile and fun abilities is Fighter. I can imagine Fighter's moveset working very well in a 3D environment, and even making tons of new moves possible. Another ability that's consistently made a return is Parasol. This ability is quite the fun and agile one, and I can imagine it working quite well in a few areas of the game shown off. One ability that I think is practically confirmed at this point that I haven't seen talked about is Spear Kirby. You see, in the second trailer of the game, we learned that you can play co-op with Waddle Dee, and he pretty much has the spear ability, which is seen with new moves. I think if they programmed this full spear ability into the game with Waddle Dee, it's probably a copy ability, especially considering the awesome new moves it has. The last ability in this category is Stone. Stone is a very iconic ability for Kirby, mostly because of Smash. In fact, it's the only ability in a Smash moveset yet to be confirmed, but it's also an ability that pretty much never misses a game. The only reason I have to doubt Stone coming back is that it may be harder to fight enemies with its main attack in a 3D space, but that's not reason enough to doubt it coming back. Plus, there could be new moves.
So yeah, those are the abilities I think are practically guaranteed to make it in. If any of them don't though, you should all come back to this video and comment "dumb face!" So yeah, let's move on to abilities I think have a very good chance to make it in.
Alright, so why not start the category off with the most boring predictions? Cook and Mike are both insta-kill abilities, and with Crash's addition to the game, it makes sense that these two could follow. Mike has made pretty consistent returns in the last few games, while Cook has been surprisingly sparse. These abilities could be shelved, but I think they're more likely to come back than not, especially Mike. A more interesting ability that could make its return is Ninja. This ability has a nice variety of powers, from projectiles to holding onto walls to kicking fast, and more. This was also one of the abilities that was in the semi-3D fighting game Kirby's Battle Royale, so it does have a basis for a 3D moveset. I'd say Ninja's quite the worthy ability. The next ability up is Plasma. I originally had this ability as one of the ones I said was guaranteed, but it's not been as consistent as I thought, although it has returned for the last few games. While it's hard to imagine the Kirby devs not bringing back this fan favorite ability, one issue it might face in 3D is hitting the enemies with its blasts, but perhaps they'll add some sort of homing ability, or a new way to aim, like the gun ability has. One ability I think would translate very well into 3D is water. I can imagine this ability controlling amazingly, with the dash, the wave, the other attacks, all working great in 3D. Another thing is that this ability would fit very well into all the beach areas we saw in this game. Perhaps Kirby could surf on the water without having to swim? Just a thought. Probably one of the less likely in this category is the whip ability. The reason I included it here though is because of two things. One, there's a good amount of desert themed areas in this game, and I think that would be a good place to implement this Wild West themed ability. The other is that it was in Kirby Battle Royale, so it does have a basis for a 3D moveset. Last up in this category is Wing Kirby. This game looks to be the biggest environment Kirby has ever roamed around in, so I think it would make a lot of sense to bring back Kirby's most mobile abilities. We already got Tornado back, but another one of Kirby's other fastest abilities is Wing. I think it would be amazing traversing this world flapping around as Wing Kirby, and there could be a lot of areas with plenty of vertical movement, and no ability would be better for that than Wing.
Well, now we've gone over every ability that I predict is more likely than not to come back. The next category is made up of abilities that I think have a decent chance to come back, but could go either way.
Alright, let's start off this category with a good one. Circus Kirby. Circus Kirby is the least common ability I've talked about so far, only appearing on the 3DS games and nowhere else. Now, the reason I put this ability on the list is just, look at this carnival area. If this isn't a perfect place to bring back Circus, I don't know what is. Also, rolling around that ball would be a lot of fun. Speaking of abilities that have only been in 2 games, Jet.
Yep, I nailed that transition.
This ability is quite the unique one. It's got a nice variety of moves that I think would fit quite well, and I think there's a lot of room to add to it. Overall, it would make for a solid addition. The next ability I have predicted here is Leaf. Alright, so the first setting we saw in the game is that of an overgrown city, and there's a lot of green in this game. Therefore, I think adding some type of plant Kirby would make sense, but the only old Kirby ability that would fit the bill is Leaf Kirby. It's also been a while since it's been in a game, so I think it's a good time for it to return. Alright, here's one I think has a lot of potential. Mirror Kirby. This was one of my favorite copy abilities in the Superstar games, but it had a pretty shallow move pool. It did show up in Kirby's Battle Royale, apparently because it won an official favorite ability pool, which I hadn't heard about before making this video. If this ability did come back, I'd like to see what kind of moves it would be given. One ability in this category that's pretty out there but makes more and more sense the more I think about it is Smash Bros. Think about it, most of the abilities that Smash Bros has will already be in the game, so not much work would be needed to implement it, and it would be amazing to play with Kirby's Smash Bros moveset in a completely 3D game. Of all the special and rare abilities throughout the franchise, I think this one has the most potential and would make for an awesome secret to find hidden in the game. Also, imagine them adding a Master Hand boss fight. It's almost too good of an idea. Another ability that's only been in a few games is Suplex. Before making this video, I honestly thought it was in most of the games, but no, it's only in 2, although there are other abilities very similar to it. This ability is mainly about grabbing and throwing enemies, and what better time to bring back a throwing ability than the first game where you could throw them in any conceivable direction. I think this potential alone makes Suplex a somewhat likely candidate, maybe the most likely in this category. Alright, so now we're at the last ability in this 50-50 section, and I think it's one a lot of you may have expected. Wheel Kirby. Like I said earlier, I think very fast and mobile abilities are going to work great in this game, and one that immediately comes to mind is Wheel. Now the problem with working Wheel in is that there may not be enough open space to drive around in, but if the controls were good enough, that wouldn't be as much of a problem. Maybe it would even feel like its own driving game where you can run over pedestrians. Now that would be great.
Next up are the abilities I think are possible but unlikely to come back for one reason or another. This category is by far the most abilities in it, so I'm going to go over these quicker.
Alright, well we've got a lot to cover in this category, but I'll be starting with an ability I actually quite like. Archer Kirby. This ability is a lot of fun, and I would like to see it return, but with the addition of Ranger Kirby, I think its role as an ability has already been filled. Artist Kirby. This one is kinda meh, it wasn't one of my favorite abilities in Star Allies, and I wouldn't mind it not coming back. Beetle. Now I do like this ability, and there's reason to think it could come back, like its inclusion in Kirby Battle Royale and Star Allies, and it's a legitimately fun ability, but not everything can come back, and I think this one is on the less likely side of things. Bell. This ability has its fun, but it's another ability I wouldn't mind not coming back. Cleaning. I think it was cool that this pretty useless ability from one of the first Kirby games was brought back and majorly revamped in Star Allies, but I don't think it's significant or unique enough to be worth bringing back again. Doctor. Just like Bell, this has only been in one mainline Kirby game and doesn't have too much to set it apart from other abilities. This is another one-off type ability I wouldn't care to see return. ESP. Now this is an ability I actually loved, mainly because it made Star Allies that much more effortless to the point where it felt like cheating. But this ability's main attack gimmick doesn't really translate well into 3D, so I predict this is a no. High Jump. This ability is pretty niche, but it is really fun when it can be used well, especially against bosses. However, with much more open space, I don't think the ability to jump high will be nearly as useful, so I don't think this ability is coming back. Magic Kirby. There's nothing wrong with this ability, it just hasn't been in a game in so long. It would be cool to see come back though. Metal. This ability is the definition of a one-off, and it's probably the most unique of all of them. That does not mean it's going to come back though. I mean, these levels look pretty big. How are we supposed to navigate them using the slowest ability ever made? This is a cool ability, but I think we can pass for now. Missile. I actually think this ability has loads of potential in a 3D space, but I can't put it anything higher than unlikely considering it's only been in one main series game, which is funny because it worked much better in the spin-off Kirby's Canvas Curse. Poison. This ability is just a slightly different water, so I don't think both will come back, but there is some poison-like purple goop that can be seen in the second trailer, so maybe that means it will come back and I'm wrong here. Who knows? Spider. This was a cool ability in Star Allies, probably one of the better ones in the game, but it doesn't give me any reason to think it would come back. Maybe though. Staff. This ability was alright, but it's pretty similar to Spear, so I think it'll get left out. UFO's an interesting one. I could maybe see it being a secret ability, but it's not that likely. The last ability is one I initially predicted would come back when first making the list, but as I thought more and more about it, it made less and less sense. I'm talking about Yo-Yo Kirby. This ability is one of my favorites to play as in Superstar Ultra, and I think it's one of the more likely abilities in this category, but what it doesn't have going for it is working well in 3D. This ability is very fun to use. I'd tell you, nothing brings me joy quite like oscillating that little circle he has, but in 3D I imagine a yo-yo being much harder to hit stuff with, to the point where it might not be worth bringing back. But there's a possibility. I think it could work.
Alright, well that's the unlikely category. At least a few of them will probably make it in, but I'd say most won't. With that done, we're on to the no chance abilities. Let's ruin your hopes and dreams.
First up for this final category is an ability many people want back. Animal Kirby. I saw some discussion about this ability before the second trailer came out, and I didn't think it would come back, but I considered the possibility. That was until the new trailer revealed Drill Kirby, which basically completely stole Animal's thunder. Animal's main thing was being used to dig through dirt, but now we see this new ability that pretty much does the same thing, so it seems like Animal's been replaced. The next ability isn't here because it's been replaced, it's just here because it f***ing sucks. Ball Kirby. This made its one and only appearance in Kirby's Adventure, where it was a hard to control mess of an ability that always led to you taking damage. Thankfully though, it's never returned. Rotten piss, Ball Kirby. What wasn't a terrible ability though was Bubble. Kirby Squeak Squad's gimmick of using bubbles in your stomach to save items and abilities for later was really cool, and Bubble Kirby took complete advantage of that. But that's never going to come back. It was simply a gimmick to make the bottom screen useful, so yeah, this ability was cool, but it's never going to come back to another game. Next is possibly the most pointless copy ability, Copy. I think this might have been added as a joke because it literally does quite nothing. One thing I will say though is Tak was one of the best enemies in Superstar, and I wish this guy would come back, but otherwise, useless ability. Cupid is an ability that technically could come back, but really shouldn't. If they're gonna bring back a bow ability, they should bring back the far superior Archer Kirby, which I already said was unlikely, so yeah, this one's completely outclassed. Festival Kirby. I won't even talk about this one. Ghost Kirby. I think this is the most intriguing one on this bottom portion of the list, especially since I found this article while making this video about why this ability in particular should come back. It is true that it would be cool to be able to possess enemies in this game, but this ability is so gimmicky that I highly doubt it could happen. Laser Kirby. This is probably one of the worst copy abilities ever made. This ability's already niche and annoying use purpose that was only good for puzzles would only be made more difficult to use by a 3D environment. This one is a definitive no. Light Kirby. All this does is light dark rooms, but in later games, fire fills that role completely by lighting torches. In fact, we see a torch being lit in the trailer, so no, we don't need Light Kirby. Maybe they could do something funny like bring it back with a whole new moveset like they did for Cleaning Kirby, but I'm gonna say that's not gonna happen. Alright, so now for the last copy ability, and I've saved the most obscure and probably worst one for last. This is the only ability on this list I had no idea existed until researching for this video, so even if you're a big Kirby fan, you may have never heard of it. That's right, it's Mini Kirby. This ability is not only obscure, only being seen in a few places exclusively in Kirby and the Amazing Mirror, but it also sucks. All it does is make you small and let you get into smaller places, and you can't even fly anymore. This is the least likely ability to come back, just because of how pointless, obscure, terrible, and unnecessary it is.
Well, that's all for this video. To be real for a second, I've been really excited for this game for a long time. It's probably the most excited I've ever been for a game, so it's been really awesome to make my first real video on this channel about it. And if you watched this far, did you like the video? Did you know about Mini Kirby before watching this? Let me know in the comments. And also, if you're interested in what I'm going to put out in the future, you should subscribe now! I have a lot of ideas for a variety of content, and I'll definitely make a follow-up to this video when the game comes out, so if you're at all interested, hit the damn button! Anyways, that's all. See ya.